Okay, I appreciate I walked through that pretty quick, and I know you're going to have questions. But Lyla is here, and she's actually just gone through the process that you're now all embarked on, with the exception of the new exam process. She hasn't done that. She's probably really happy with that in that sense. But the idea is we'd like to bring her up and give her a chance to say a few words on her experience that you're probably going to go through yourselves in terms of getting your accreditation and your membership. Okay, Lyla?
So my name's Lyla, and I am the Manager of Planning and Development for the City of Lacombe, and we are just located north of Red Deer, and we're about 14,000 people. And I'm seeing a lot of youth in the room compared to me. So one of the things that's slightly different about probably your experience versus mine is that I started my process to get my RPP much later in my career than it looks like a lot of you are going to be. So I guess, how many years of work experience do people have right now? Are you guys sitting at about less than 2 years? Show of hands, maybe? Just kind of, okay. Less than 5? Okay. Less than 10? Okay. So I started mine with about 12 to 13 years of experience. So I graduated in 2001 with an undergrad from the University of Saskatchewan, and I moved to the States and started working there. And because I was in the States, I had contemplated going through the APA route at the time, but I needed 4 years of work experience before I could gain my accreditation. And I worked in the States for 3 years, and then I decided to go and gain my master's, and so that kind of ended any type of application from the States route. And I went to England and I got a master's. I got my MBA in urban regeneration. And I had thought in my mind that it was an accredited program, but it turns out that it wasn't. It was just a degree, not that that's bad or anything. And my undergrad was accredited. But when I started working in the UK after I'd gained my master's, it became quite challenging for me to go through the RTPI route. And so I once again kind of thought about how I was going to gain accreditation, and I basically just kept putting it off and putting it off. So one of my first tips is don't put it off. But one of the things that I was doing was I was still logging my experience, and I was still getting people to sign off on it as I went through as I undertook some of the experience. And I was very haphazardly logging it. I'm not that organized. So, all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, I've got a spare, Saturday morning, I'm going to log, the last 6 months of work and try and get somebody to sign off on that. But when I moved back to Canada in 2012, I realized how much Canada really pushes the certification. And being in the role that I am right now, where I work with a lot of young graduates who are looking to gain certification, I realized it was really important for me to gain my RPP because it's really part of the Canadian program. And so I started this process off in 2014. And I had all of that years of experience and all of those logbooks, so I kind of ported that over and helped use that. But one of the things that might be slightly different for me was that because I am old, I actually knew quite a few people in the business, so finding a sponsor and a mentor wasn't going to be a challenge for me. So what I have done, I'm going to kind of back up, is go through my slides. And this is kind of going over my experience, and yeah, so the first thing I would say is use the PSB website. It actually has a lot of really helpful material on it. It is, I find, difficult to navigate. Sorry, PSB. But it has templates for your logbook, and it has templates for your mentorship. And I think they're in PDF format, so you have to do your own little wizardry and put them into Word, and then you can, or whatever document editing program you want to use. But what they allow you to do is to see the basics of what they're looking for in terms of your logging of your experience. And so they're great resources, so please use them. And then the other thing is that PSB will provide you with a lot of study material for your exams, and that material is completely 100% relevant. So as Gary pointed out, you can't just wing the exams, you have to study, but they do give you the study material. So that's really important. So that's kind of basic, but it's true. They give you the information that you need. And the one thing I would also say is that if you haven't signed up yet, start, because if you're like me, you'll procrastinate and you'll keep forgetting and forgetting. And it is a set time period. You need your 2 years of experience. You need your year of mentorship. You can't rush it. So sign up. And once you sign up, you'll probably start actually working on the process and being a bit more diligent. Once again, very basic tip, but it's true. Sign up when you can. The other thing is that, going back to that mentor issue, if you can't find a mentor, APPI will help find you one. And if there is a problem with finding you a mentor, APPI needs to know about it in order to work on it. So I would, contact APPI. Don't wait till you have a mentor. If you're struggling, contact APPI and they will help you out. But if we go to the next slide, your mentorship is a really important part of this process. And when I started, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of like, oh, I have to do a mentorship. I don't want to do this. But it turned out to be probably the most valuable part of the process for me. And because it's somewhat of you are involved in it for this period of a year, you want to find a mentor who you have a good rapport with. And so if you can avoid contacting APPI and you can avoid getting paired up with somebody random, I would say try and work your network and see if somebody can help find you a mentor. And I think it's a little bit challenging because people who are taking on the mentor role don't want an unknown, so they kind of want somebody to vouch for the person that they're going to mentor. And so it is a little bit about, it's almost like a job application where you want to have a reference. So I'm going to go and say to my friend, you should mentor this person because I think that you would have a good relationship. And I think you do need to have a good relationship with your mentor because you're learning a lot from them. You're bringing them discussion items, you're having conversations with them, and you want to feel comfortable with them and you want to learn from it. And I learned a lot from my mentorship. My mentor was in the private sector. I've never worked in the private sector. And we had a lot of good discussions about their viewpoints on bringing projects forward, how, the challenges that they face, the frustrations that they face with the municipality. And in return, I was talking about the projects that I had coming forward and, looking for advice on, their input onto it. And it was a really valuable process. But you'll only get out of it what you put into it. So you have to manage that mentorship yourself. So you set up the meetings, you bring forward discussion topics, you have to ask them questions. And they'll come back to you and they'll respond. And log those discussions and send them back to your mentor because there's going to be this ongoing back and forth that you have with your mentor. So once you have your first meeting, you have to write up about that meeting, and then you send it back to your mentor, and then they send it back to you after they've reviewed it. So it's kind of this ongoing process. The one thing that I added to the discussion, to the template that PSB had, was I added the core competencies as we had a discussion. So we talked about public consultation. So then I identified the core competency that discussion was about, and I inserted it as a heading into my logbook. And this helped me track which competencies we had discussed and kind of helped me figure out where I wanted to take the next conversation to. And it's kind of also important because your core competencies are kind of this string or this theme that runs throughout your whole process. So you're continually asked about those core competencies. And when you get to your professional exam at the end, you have to know your core competencies. You have to have them memorized, and you have to be able to know where they fit in and what they mean. It's not that challenging, but you have to know those competencies. So if you are constantly referring to them in your mentorship, it helps kind of, keep that to the forefront when you get to the professional exam. And those core competencies are kind of what Gary had said. This is what you're being assessed on by your sponsor later on. So I put the core competencies as kind of like a sub-item in my mentor logbook, and then that way I could track that we had kind of covered all the different topics that we needed to do. Okay, and then logging your work experience. So this is where I might not get invited back by APPI, so I apologize. They didn't vet my presentation. I say log your work experience because, while it might not be core planning experience, your competencies are very diverse, and there are a lot of connections that you can make. So I've just put down some things. So development permits, you're implementing plan and policies. That's a core competency. So when you issue a development permit, if that's what you're doing some policy implementation. If you get asked to research a file or do an environmental search assessment, that kind of thing, you're looking at plan and policy consideration. You're integrating knowledge from other people, and you're compiling that back together. Core competency. Same with property history preparation. Why was this property developed the way that it was? Oh, that reflects the human settlement aspect. How has our community grown? Seems kind of silly, but it's actually true. There was reasons for all of those decisions that were made 10, 20, 30 years ago. It reflected the policy of the time, it reflected trends, and all of that is your human settlement stuff. So SDAB, MPC files, government law and policy. So just some tips and trips. All of your work experience is really relevant, and you can use it. Now, APPI may disagree and say, no, you can't call that core planning, but it definitely supplements your core planning work experience. And planning is really diverse. We all work on different things. I didn't do a development permit application until I moved to Alberta. I didn't do a land use plan until I moved to Alberta. But I did a lot of population projections that went into creating a policy about how many houses we should build. So everybody in this room has a different work experience path, and you can log that information because planning is so diverse.
I just want one. No, I agree with you saying on the key is that as a professional, you need to be able to articulate that in your experience and tie it to the core competencies and tie it to the definition of responsible professional planning, whatever definition you're using this at that point in time, because that's up for grabs. But we do have a definition that we're working on and that we use right now. But you need to articulate that, and that's the failure that a lot of people find. The people going through the old stream are failing to articulate how their experience is related to planning, and that's what we all need to see, and we need to understand that you understand what your responsible component is about that it's not completely a clerical function, because sometimes it reads like a complete clerical function or, you know, an economic function or something else, and those are all maybe professional work, but they're not professional planning. So you need to be able to communicate that clearly in writing.
And I agree, because I always look at the development permit application side. Are you just looking at your LUB and saying tick, tick, tick? Are you saying, why is the regulation like that? They're not meeting that regulation, but are they meeting that broader planning principle? And so that's where, that's where I'm expecting you as planners to go beyond that little guidebook of your land use bylaw, and you're thinking about where it fits in your MDP and your other plans. And all of the rules that went into your LUB are based off of something. 6 meter front yard, that's the length of a car. You know, side property boundaries typically related to appropriate separation distance for fire, all that kind of stuff. You have to think about those things sometimes. And don't forget to include a discussion on ethical behavior in your guidebook. You are all going to discover that you're going to be asked to do things that don't align with 100% pure planning principles. It is a political field. It is an economic influence field. And you will have to balance those discussions. You're going to have to make recommendations. You're going to have to meet halfway. And this is a great opportunity to start thinking about how that aligns on according to all of the things that you have learned. And now as you're implementing and actually working on things, this is a great place to put those and start thinking about that ethical behavior component of your certification. Okay, preparing for ethics exam. This is really short. The PSB gives you a set of course material to study. Study it. That is what the exam is based off of, is that course material. It's about 50, at least when I wrote it, was about 50 pages long. I think I read through it a couple times the month, 6 weeks before I actually took the exam. I made some study notes. I memorized my study notes. It's a multiple choice exam, so you're going to have to know this theory of behavior means this. You can't, we've all written multiple choice. I don't know what else to say about it. The information in the material that they provide you will let you pass that exam. What I think is really neat about the ethics exam is that it involves a component of ethics in that you monitor yourself and submit it yourself. So I don't want to say that you can all cheat, but I'm hoping that you won't because you're doing your ethics exam. So remember, you're doing your ethics exam. But it's a good little exam. It makes you think, reflect on your ethics that you wrote down in your logbook. And sometimes you don't get to do what you think you want to do. So then your professional exam. So this is actually how I got involved with this, because I was really disgruntled with the professional exam, but that's not why I'm here. I think that it's great that it switched to a multiple choice format, mainly because it was an incredibly long time period that you wrote the exam and you had no feedback. But once again, PSB does provide you with the study material. Use it. But you have to also study your ethics material, and you should probably go through your logbook and your mentorship and remind yourself about the application of those core competencies, the application of the code of conduct for CIP, code of professional conduct. So go through and review all of the things that you've done to get you to that professional material, to that professional exam. But really you're studying the material that they provided for you and the ethics material that they provide for you. The test is challenging. I did not pass on the first try, and I was devastated, embarrassed, frustrated, angry, and I just internalized all of that. Don't do that. What I would say is maybe talk to your mentor if you don't pass. And the other thing is that if you know people in the room and you go through this process together, maybe you can talk about your experience writing the exam. Once again, I was, I've got so many years of experience, it'll be fine. And then I didn't pass. And then I had to wait a really long time to find out why. And then when I found out why, I modified how I wrote for the next time. So if you do fail, you're not alone. Apparently there's I don't want to say a high failure rate, but it's
significant.
It's a significant.
It's actually quite low compared to other professions. Some of the professions the failure rate is huge.
Yeah. So you're not alone if you fail. And if you do fail, think of it as that was your practice exam. The great thing is that your second exam doesn't cost as much as the first exam, so don't worry about that as much. I think the second exam is $100, so it's, I'm not trying to belittle $100, but it's not $6. Yeah. Yes. If you are concerned about your test, contact the PSB. They should be responsive to you. That is what they're hired for. So please contact the PSB, contact your mentor. I did none of this necessarily. I contacted the PSB, but that would be what I would say. But be prepared to study for it. Okay, and then this is kind of my last slide. Enjoy the process. I know it sounds kind of silly because it's extra work that you have to put into your professional days, and it is, challenging. Nobody wants to start logging their work experience when they get home from work or even at work. But it does offer you opportunities to learn and reflect on the work that you do. It reminds you of all the things that you are undertaking and where they sit in that broader planning spectrum. The mentorship was awesome, in my opinion. I learned a lot, and I even enjoy, sometimes this is kind of lame, but when I was going through this, preparing this, I enjoyed reading through my mentorship logbook again and reminding myself about some of the conversations we had and where I was at 2 years ago and what I was working on, and how some of it is still relevant and some of it is distant history, because that's the way work is. Sometimes you're 100% into a project and a year later it means nothing to you. Like I said, value your mentorship time. Celebrate your successes. You're working through towards gaining a professional certification. You celebrate, why not? And the other thing I would say is that find opportunities to get involved with APPI. You can log these in your book, in your logbook, and you can discuss them with your mentor. Working with my mentor, I actually ended up volunteering for the conference last year, which meant that I got to meet a whole bunch of really cool people in the planning profession in Alberta, and I got to work on some fun things in preparing for the conference. And it just allows you an opportunity to meet other people and to continue that whole continuous professional learning, which you will, once you gain your certification, you are required to do. And good luck is all I'd have to say.
So just a couple final notes, and then we'll start on the questions. We at the PSB and at the affiliation level we want you to succeed, okay? This is not designed to discourage you. It's not designed to get you out of the profession. It's not designed to get you fired from your job. We actually want you in the organization. And this is, our job is to make sure you get there. And this is what our efforts are devoted to. The second final point is, at the end of all this, you'll get RPP behind your name. A lot of people spend a lot of time, decades in fact, getting it to that point, a registered professional planner. If it means nothing to you, it'll mean nothing to anybody else as well. All right? So if you want to belittle it or think it's inconsequential, anyone you meet will treat it the same way you're treating it. Our profession is designed and intended so that you're operating at a certain level, certain ethical level, a certain professional level. It's the seal of approval when you go out into the field to an employer, to a client, to the person on the street, the public at large, that you're someone that has a skill set, has a knowledge base, has a level of expertise, has leadership potential to guide them through this profession. And that's what it's meant to signify. So I'm hoping at the end of our discussion today that you'll take that away, if nothing else, that this is what it means. It has value. It has the value you put into it. There's the accreditation route, and as I mentioned earlier, the prior learning assessment route. Okay, planners, we love acronyms, so we came up with one. We put it on the website, and we didn't put that little star behind it that actually spells it out, but that's what it means. So that's for someone who has a degree that is not from an accredited university. All right, so you've got geography, you've got urban studies, you've got biology, environmentalism, whatever degree you've got. And it has to be a degree, not a diploma, not a certificate, whatever else. It's got to be what's considered a degree by the province that issues degrees, okay? That's all regulated by each individual province. All right, so a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Applied Arts, or a Master of Science, or whatever. It has to be a degree. That's the starting point.
And I can just clarify on that. Okay. Originally, the intent was the bottom line would be it would be a bachelor's degree. In Alberta, NAID is issuing applied bachelor's degrees, and because other provinces weren't using that terminology, we've been required to allow those applied degrees. The other thing that we failed to articulate, because when we were going through the Planning for the Future process, the understanding was there were only 4-year bachelor's degrees in Canada, but unfortunately we found out, I think, that one of the universities in the East is still offering a 3-year bachelor degree. So because the documentation did not clearly state 4-year, that 3-year degree is acceptable because it is deemed to be a bachelor's degree.
So that's partly the key. One, you're employed. Don't forget that. You have to be employed in the profession. Okay? You have your degree. You then are working that 5 years, as Lyla pointed out, all those kinds of things. You have to show in that 5-year work experience, when you put your portfolio together, how it all relates back. Okay? How is it tied to the broader planning profession?
And Gary, we have a question from Calgary that's tied to this, so that's why I'm interrupting you here.
Okay.
The question is, what qualifies as professional planning work that is loggable? Can you provide some examples?
Okay, so Lyla showed examples in your little slide, things you're going to work on. So anything, be careful how I phrase this. Okay, so you're working on, say, subdivision development. You're working on bylaw development. You're working on planning thing, an area structure plan in Alberta, an area redevelopment plan, a municipal development plan. The old terms that guys of my vintage talk about are outline plans or local area structure plans. Anything from that perspective, okay? But it can be broader than that. If you're focused in the transit side and you're working on, say, transit-oriented design, if you're working on urban design, if you're working on activities that are related to transportation elements, you're working on policy development that relates to usage of land, the activities people do, the development of land itself. That broad scope in that sense, but it could be more. If you're involved in the park side in developing the park development, laying out the design element, the consideration element, the policy element, the usage element, those can be tied together. The key is, as Lyla pointed out, you're relating it back to the competencies. All right? That's the broader perspective. I spent most of my career in the land use side, moving up into management. So the scope can be the economic development side. I need to do population projections. I need to do pro forma. I work in the private side now, not the public. So you have to do a pro forma of putting your project together. Is it actually going to make money at the end of the day? How will I do that? You're dealing with the legislation side. Now I got to go to council and I got to get a bylaw amendment done. I need a development agreement negotiated. I need to talk to the engineering people on servicing and whatnot. That's, you know, the broader and broader scope. This is the beauty, this is the thing I loved about the profession, is that it wasn't an apple, it was an onion. Every time I peeled open something, it led me somewhere else. And that was the exciting part for me that went in it. A good chunk of my time spent in emergency management, which in many ways has a relationship to the same processes and procedures and thought processes as the planning side. So how does that work? Okay, same techniques, same skill sets, same knowledge base, you just apply it in a slightly different direction. Okay. Now I don't say that I'm now an emergency manager and that's the planning side. That's not the skill sets I acquired in the one side are transferable to others, and that's the beauty of the profession. You become essentially the go-to person because of your knowledge base, your skill set. If you're doing research, okay, how do you do to put something together? Those are the skill sets, again, that are required. It could be the economics component. You got to know your numbers, and I think that's one area. If you have design skills, okay, not a draftsman, okay, but if you have design skills where you can articulate what it is. I can think often in my career, the words just didn't work, you know, but you go to the whiteboard, or my day blackboard, and you drew a picture, then you can convey the ideas. So the ability to communicate the concepts that you're thinking about or that someone else is. You work in a profession where it pulls from all sorts of other places. So you got to talk to the engineers, you got to talk to the transportation guy, you got to talk to the social housing person. You have to synthesize all that into something. That's a skill set, and we're good at that. And if you can master that, that can take you in lots of places. Upwards, sideways, you know, overseas. Those are skills that you can acquire and develop and advance you in your profession. So that when you're working, doing your PLAR, you're capturing all that. Lyla made a good point of relating it back to the competency. Yes, excellent point. Because the assessor is going to be doing the exact same thing. He'll be looking at it and trying to figure out, gee, how does this comply to the competencies that we're measuring? If you've laid it out for them, it's that simple. But if you don't, I did zoning bylaws. Okay, well, what part? You were the guy running out, posting the notice on the telephone pole? Was that your job? Or were you actually meeting with the client, developing the wording, working it through the process, negotiating with the other people, getting it through council so it becomes actually an adopted thing? Okay, that works. Okay, so you have to take away some of the technical component of the job. Yes, I need to set up a meeting. Okay, that doesn't count. Okay, making a phone call, booking a room, you know, getting coffee and donuts, all useful skills. Don't get me wrong. Okay, but that's at the lower level. We are talking the higher level stuff. Once the assessor has looked at your portfolio and gives you, yes, you've crossed that line, you've got your 5 years, that's when you enter into the actual process of 1 year of mentorship, 1 year of sponsorship. Then you write your ethics exam, and once those 3 are done, okay, then you write the professional exam. Success in all those 4 areas comes to the PSB. We then recommend to the affiliate, Lyla Peter has met all the requirements for professional membership in the Canadian Institute of Planners, and we recommend her for. And it's the affiliate who makes the final call, because you become a member of that affiliate. In Canada, the affiliates, the larger agreement is your membership in one affiliate is transferable, unimpeded, to all the other affiliates with the exception of OUQ. There they require a language and test, not only verbal but in writing. Okay. But you can get your job here, you can get your membership here, you can get your certification here, you can then move to Saskatchewan or Nova Scotia or BC. And there's no need to rewrite the exam, there's no need to go through the process again. It is simply phoning MaryJane and saying, MaryJane, I'm moving to BC, can you please send my file to Dave Crossley? That simple. Okay.
And just to clarify on that, if you're in the middle of the process, if you're a subscriber doing PLAR, or you've already become your candidate because you have an accredited degree, or you've done your PLAR, you can transfer to another PTIA as well. And then we just have to let the PSB know that you've moved and you might have a new mentor or a new sponsor.
Yeah.
So we do have another question related to...
I just want to touch. MaryJane just mentioned, what was the term you used? The subscriber. If you're following the PLAR route, that doesn't mean we don't want to ever see you for that 5 years, okay? Don't want to leave you with that impression. We'd like you to be part of the family, essentially, if you want to put it that way. Be involved in one as you're working through that time period. Okay, so you can become what we call a subscriber to the affiliate. And that can link you into all sorts of things, communications, events, activities. You can help us by volunteering, etc. You can also give us feedback. This route is not working, or I'm having a problem with this procedure or this process, so that we can correct those kinds of things. Maybe it's just an element component, or it could be, well, no, that's a basic competency. We're not changing that, but thanks for the heads up, that kind of thing. So there's that element to it as well. It's not that, okay, you're here, I'm in PLAR, I got 4 more years to go, and we don't see you for those 4 years. That's not the idea.
So just to clarify, a subscriber is not a regulated member of the Institute. I always use the worst case scenario. If you have a degree in fine arts and you happen to land in Whitecourt and you're a good writer and a good communicator, and the town manager knows you, they hire you because they can't get a planner, so you've got no experience in planning and no education in planning, so you're going to get that 5 years in planning. During that time, you don't have any competency in the planning profession, so we cannot regulate you. So during that 5 years while you acquire that planning, you can be a subscriber of APPI and start to network and come to the conference and gain that professional experience. But during that time, we can't regulate you in the public interest or give you any professional standing with the Institute.
Okay.
So, but yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, in the old system, was that what you would call the provisional member?
No, candidates was the old provisional member. In the old system, that was unrelated degree and related degree candidates.